We talk about downsizing like it's obvious. You sell the big house, buy something smaller, free up some cash, simplify life. Sounds very tidy. But the timing of that decision is where it can get complicated.
Because it's never just about property, is it? It's about identity, your energy, control, and sometimes pride.
I'm Mark Leishman.
And I'm Hannah McQueen, and this is The Next Bit. Today we'll answer many of the questions that people wrestle with. When should I downsize? And more importantly, how do you know if you're doing it too early or too late?
So Hannah, when people say we're going to fund our retirement by selling the house, are they actually being realistic?
I don't think they really understand the implication of what's involved to make that a reality. So yes, I think they believe that the home will bridge any savings gap that they haven't managed to build themselves, that when they sell the home, they'll be able to release some capital. I think the essence of that is true. They just don't understand the arc of preparing to sell your home. They don't understand how much they need to get for it for the next chapter to be unlocked or the next level to be unlocked. So it's a blanket statement and you're like, yep, that's true. You need the detail. If you're going to try and maximise this, and it is probably the single biggest financial decision or financial milestone you're going to have for your last 30 years of life.
And I mean, imagine psychologically, I know psychologically it has a big effect as well, because that house holds family memories. Our house that we owned nearly 15, 20 years ago is now up for sale again, and we're looking through all the photos and looking at the changes that have been made, and the kids are going, through and say, oh, look what they did there, oh my God. But it also is kind of sad, because you're seeing a place that you had a dream for and perhaps didn't realise, or a place that your family's all grown up and now you're leaving it with all those memories. It's psychologically, it's quite a major change, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And normally felt more for one partner than another, usually. For one is more transactional about it. But there's huge memories in there. And moving house, certainly if it's been the big family home, going to something smaller, that there's a lot of baggage, emotional baggage with that. And it could be positive. You could have had amazing memories, or it could be that you are disappointed that you're having to downsize.
Not quite ready to go.
Yeah, and I think the thing that people don't appreciate if you're going into a much smaller place is you're potentially releasing 70% of what you own in order to get into the next place. So not only are you leaving behind a building that maybe has a lot of memories, but any hoarding tendencies get addressed in that moment, and that is also painful. You
can't fit them into the new house.
Doesn't go with you to the next stage, and that's uncomfortable. Absolutely.
I think of I think just about every family I know have one of in the door jamb, the heights of the kids, all the little normally in pencil little marks saying, oh, he's 4'1", 5'2", whatever. So all those little things that just are such memories.
Yeah, that's right. And so what is supposed to be a financial transaction actually gets wrapped up in a whole lot of emotion, because those memories make you do silly things, usually. And you don't keep your eye on the ball at the point where you must keep your eye on the ball.
Can you think of a silly thing, an example of that?
Yeah, you will want to sell the property to someone who's going to love it or be like you or replicate the lifestyle you had there. Like, you want it to live on, and I understand that. And if you have the luxury of that, by all means. But really, we have to be a little more
pragmatic, is it?
Yeah, pragmatic or commercial, ruthless, whatever term I can go deeper. That for many, that is the move that is going to determine if you are going to be able to live the lifestyle that you want for the next 15, 20 years. I don't give two hoots who's buying the house. If I'm looking at a client, that transaction is supposed to serve a purpose as part of a bigger plan. And I think that emotional connection, it feels it's stronger as you're older. I think people manipulate you for it. You're easy to, especially someone like you, Mark. You're an open book. You're a soft touch. People could create a story, and
I'll fall for
and you'll fall for it. And maybe the story's true. I don't know. But when I was working with you, say there was no room for the emotion, or I'll try and acknowledge the emotion. Because there's a sensitivity with that, but actually don't lose sight of why we're here. And I think most people don't even have it in sight why they are doing this.
It's a really interesting story, actually, about my in-laws, and they had a beautiful brick home with a huge garden, and a supermarket was next door, and it needed more space. It wanted to expand, and so they wanted to buy the house. And my in-laws, and I don't think I'm talking too much out of school here, but they would think, well, we won't sell it to them, we'll sell it to someone else, thinking that it will save the house. But of course, that someone else would have sold it to the single.
I know.
And sadly, the house was sold. They got a heck of a good price for it, so that was fine. But it was bowled over within 6 months. So that was a real classic example of you could have let the emotions really get in the way of being sensible.
Yeah, and I think why the emotions play such a big part is you're moving to the unknown, aren't you? Like that next stage of retirement or aging. And at least if there's something logical in how you've come to a decision, oh, well, I'm not selling it to the supermarket. I'm kind of, if you can rationalize something to yourself, it is more comforting. But I guess my point is it's okay to not have the comfort around the decision. That's okay, because if we can unlock the next level, it served its purpose. And the home is supposed to serve a purpose.
Yes. And that those memories don't disappear just because the house, you're no longer in the house. Yeah. What were the questions that people were asking you about this sort of selling the house and using the money for your retirement? Was that a common thing in your Enable Me years?
Yeah, definitely. But they often ask the wrong question. They would say, or they might say, is downsizing the home the right strategy, or is it a strategy? And the answer is yes. Or they would tell me they're going to downsize their home. I'm like, okay. The question that they needed to ask is, when do I need to do it by? What am I going to do with the proceeds? And possibly before that, how much am I trying to get for this transaction? So when, how much, and what do I do next? And no one seemed to ask those questions. And that would be the part that I would bring to the table, because you're trying to shape a plan. There's no point just doing something for the sake of it. I think one of my favourite sayings is, don't row hard or row harder if you're rowing in the wrong direction. Sacrifice for the sake of sacrifice is a waste of time. Let's make it purposeful. So if you are going to downsize a home, to what extent do you need to downsize? Well, how do you work that out? Well, the first thing you go, well, what do we think it's worth? And whatever you think it's worth, it'll be worth less, just as a general rule. And what do you think you're going to move to? And whatever you think that is, you probably will spend more. So kind of the gap between them starts to close. And we can talk about, on average, what does a downsize unlock. But that difference is how much money you're going to release, in theory. Now, offsetting that is you probably need to zhuzh the house up. That's going to cost money, so that's coming off the proceeds. You need to pay for someone to sell. You might not be able to move into your next property kind of seamlessly, so there could be rent, there could be double handling of costs, there could be storage costs. All these things start to erode what was going to be quite a strong gesture towards your savings. Suddenly it's not quite as big as what you thought it would be, and all of those things that I mentioned often require payment before you've sold the house. Where's that money coming from if the house was where all your liquidity is sitting?
Yep.
And so that's the bit that you need to navigate. But I think for a lot of people, then accompanying that is, what can I realistically unlock? The next question is, and how does that compare to what I need? So if the house is only going to give you 300,000, but for you to live the lifestyle you've said you want to live, that's 500,000. Well, there's a gap of 200,000 there, right? So what is the implication of that gap? And I'm trying to bring that to life for people. It's never the end of the world. No one is dying if there is a gap, but there is an implication. And usually it means we might need you to work a little bit longer because we can't afford the gap to be that big.
Lower your
expectations. Be prepared to not give money to your kids as an inheritance before you die. You know, just different things that maybe for you were important, but they were important in the context of you didn't know what the trade-off was.
Yes.
And when you start to understand these things, what has always surprised me and always impressed me about the human psyche is people are prepared to compromise, always, if they know the reason why and they know how long they need to compromise for. And I always thought that my job was to explain that to them. And if I don't, again, there's no right or wrong. Like, I don't care if they don't listen to me, but I need to show them all the options.
Yes.
And often in a relationship, normally one person takes the lead on the finances and the other one tends to check out a little bit. And that's normal. It's not necessarily healthy, but it's normal. The problem is when the person who's made the financial decisions is constrained by their own biases, their own knowledge, and their own experiences, because navigating this does require you to bring in the right help, the right perspectives at the right time, not indefinitely, but you have to maximize those moments.
Is there a sweet spot, a period where you think you should?
Well, I would normally say 2 years before you think you need the money is when you should start the downsizing process. Right. Typically, the age is kind of 75-ish is when you need the money for most of us, because your KiwiSaver would be running out by that point, but you've got to give yourself a 2-year window. Because I often say the difference between a bad outcome and a good outcome is normally only 18 months. You just have to be able to hold on. It will come right, but you have to be able to hold on to get to that point. And most people, they start their run so late that if the timing's not right, they can't hold on to wait for it to get right. So give yourself that 2 years. And that might be, you might say, well, for the first 6 months, let's clean the house out. Let's get someone in to declutter. I mean, I love a good skip bin. I love a good skip bin. And in fact, if my husband has annoyed me, my passive-aggressive punishment is I'm ordering a skip bin. I'm going to show you. He's got a touch of hoarder tendencies about him.
Yeah.
So you've got to start.
There's always Sally Army and the various good wool shops, the dove shops and things like that. They're fantastic.
They do so much good. It's just a lot of good comes from it. But if you've got to unload 70% of your stuff to get to the next property, and that's sort of the guidance if you're moving into a retirement village, there's no room for anything.
Yes, storage.
It's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard. And then, it will rip your nightie that you might be trying to sell some of these things, which are worth a lot of money and have cost you a lot of money, and someone will pay like cents on the dollar for it. Yeah. And again, that's frustrating. But that's the reality. Like, move on. Like, don't sweat it. I mean, some people just make it so painful.
Yes.
Like, let's just draw a line, cut our losses.
Okay.
Next stage.
Measure it. It's less about age and more about sort of your energy levels.
Well, certainly if you're a hoarder, I'd say that's the case. Well, what I know is as you get older, you do lose confidence, certainly around financial transactions, especially if you've stopped working. You do lose confidence and you do lose a sense of agency. So you are more easily influenced, or the cynic cynical side of that would be you're taken advantage of. They see you coming, right? Or you're a target for some people.
Fair game.
Yeah, it's fair game. So I would say it's another reason why you want to downsize earlier is it's a process to downsize, give yourself 2 years, but you want to do that when you've got the energy to do it and when you've got the energy to absorb stress, because it can be stressful, because when you do get stressed and if you do just want it kind of gone, that's when someone offers you an insulting price and you take it because you've run out of time.
Yeah.
Hate those people, but you're like, well, why wouldn't they? They'll probably buy clients as well. I might be cheeky, so...
I mean, we had experience of moving islands, moving from the North Island, and, the costs involved in that were just ridiculous.
Horrific, yeah.
Yeah, and so I know exactly that feeling of thinking, as you say, it just erodes what you've got.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And you've got the layer of moving towns, islands are sort of an extreme of that, but a lot of people they do need to leave the place where they have spent a lot of their years, which makes it more jarring again, doesn't it?
You're losing friends and all sorts of things.
Yes.
How many years of living costs should you hope to gain from downsizing?
Well, the average is around 3 years of extra good quality life it gives you, maybe 3.5.
Doesn't sound a lot, doesn't it?
Doesn't barely seems worth it. But that's on average. I guess the goal here is we want you to be better than average. And the other way of looking at that is, well, if you kind of do what you were going to do, you're probably going to be average, right? We make it worth your while. Like I think you want it to give at least 10 years. That would be good. Or at least enough time for something else to happen.
Of course, the other thing that comes into play is the state of the market. Because, most people, I think you already said, their estimate of the value of their house is far greater than what the market tells you. And when the market is not in great shape, or things are struggling to sell, or there's too many properties on the market, too much opposition to you selling, all these factors play a part, don't they?
Yeah, well, some people would say you're buying and selling in the same market.
That's the best way, yes.
So in theory,
if you can do that,
if you're selling at a loss, you should be able to buy the next property a lot cheaper. So that's the theory, but the reality is a little bit different. Your home is more expensive because you're downsizing in this situation. The more expensive a property is, the fewer people can afford it. Or the inverse of that is, as it becomes cheaper, more people can afford to buy it. So what that means is, because the market that you're selling your home with is smaller, you often don't get the premium for your property. It's just, you just don't get it because not as many people are pushing the price up. And then the inverse is more people can afford the property you're moving to. And so that pushes their price up. Your prices come down, their prices come up. And what you've sacrificed could be huge, but the financial toll of that is just peanuts, really. I've seen people leave lifestyle blocks, like 4 or 5 bedrooms, a beautiful property, and they might be moving into town to get a 3-bedroom small property. You'd think it would be hundreds of thousands of dollars of difference, and it doesn't equate to that much. It might be a little bit, right? And the other reason is you're wanting to buy a property that has low maintenance.
Yes.
So it tends to be new, it's double glazed, it's got kind of everything that you need, but you pay a premium for a new property versus an old property. And again, your family home would be older. So you've got a smaller market and it's older and it requires work. And you're wanting to move into a cheaper property that more people can afford and that costs more to build anyway. So that's why people don't tend to realise what they should for the gesture of the whole exercise. And that's okay. But then when you start to overlay things like what you said, the moving costs or the storage costs or the fact you had to do your home up, not to even get a maximum price, but just to get it so that someone would put an offer on it.
Yes.
Well, that all costs money, and that's got to come from somewhere. You have to be able to pay for it up front, but then it has to be repaid if you've borrowed it, and that's going to come from your sale proceeds, which comes all the way back to you just don't get as much as what you should if you do it the way we've been trained to do it, which is drift towards it. And I, you know me, I'm about, well, do not drift. Like, this is important. And
Worst thing you can do.
well, worst thing you can do. And if you do you play 500, the card game?
I know the game. I don't play it, no.
Or poker, or whatever.
Yeah.
I sound like a card shark. I'm not. But if you know the concept of you have a trump card,
Yes.
financially in life, you have very few trump cards that you can identify for what they are. I think one of the trump card people don't realise, probably not having kids is a trump card, a financial trump card, unless you needed them to pay for your care. But not having kids, not marrying a dud is probably a trump card, certainly a financial dud, oh my gosh. And you go all the way through. If you can have a job that has progressions, these are good things. If you can align with your partner on a goal, that's a trump card. But if you come to the end of your life, life has dealt you a hand. Downsizing your home is a trump card that you can play.
Yeah.
Now, back to my 500 game. If you throw away the trump card or just don't play it in the right order, that would just infuriate me if I was your partner, right? Because your 500 partner.
Yeah.
Because you had a chance. You had a chance to bring it home and you just threw it away. And that's my observation of most people.
Right. They just do that.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
I still like them. I'll still help them. But
Is that's the common mistake, though.
that's the Kiwi attitude. Like, who cares if you've got a trump card? Puh.
Yeah. So, I mean, that argument, though, you'd think, well, don't bother selling at all because, you're going to have to spend that money to buy a much smaller house, but perhaps newer with double glazing, all the fancy stuff that you have to have these days. But, you're going to pay more for it. So why move at all?
Well,
but you've got to. Eventually you've got to.
Well, there could be different motivations for moving. Sometimes if you do have that big place, it's too big for you.
Yeah.
Or you're not keeping up with the maintenance, or you're worried that your partner, Trevor, is up the ladder and he doesn't know what he's doing now. There could be reasons why it's just not sustainable. Or your kids are worried because you're so far away.
Yes.
Or you're too far away from hospitals or whatever the case is. So there can be reasons why that property just doesn't serve you anymore, or it's not as safe as what it needed to be. Look, some people want to live where they live for the rest of their life. That would be success. Yeah. But if that's your goal, you have to be able to afford it, and then you also need to make your home safe for aging, and not all houses are.
If you've got 2 stories or something like that,
it creates risk.
Railings and all sorts of things you need. Yeah.
Yes, and those things risk isn't bad, but you just have to identify it and identify the emerging risks and then work out, well, how are we going to mitigate this? And if you want to stay in your 2-story house for as long as possible, well, then that would mean, we've got to put those corrections to the home so that that's suitable, and we probably need to remove any risk around falls, instability, mobility.
As we've heard, falls are the worst thing.
It's because falls creates the fracture, which puts you in hospital, and then it's good night nurse, not soon after that. It's just let's not romanticize this.
Yes.
We've got this.
Yes.
We are going to identify, work this through, and come up with the right solution. And I think as you get older, especially with your partner, and especially if one of those partners has tended to take the lead in some of these decisions, as they get older, they might not feel confident, or you might not feel confident in their ability to do that. Let's get an independent voice at the table that's going to help you navigate this, because it feels so good when you do it well.
So the scenario now is you've got your house, and as you say, everyone thinks their house is worth more than it really is. But you have that and you think, well, that's money in the bank. I'm going to buy this one over here because it's perfect for us. Downsizing, it's new, double glazing, all the bells and whistles that you need these days for a healthy home, all that stuff. So I'll just put an offer and buy that without selling my house. So that would be a no-no in your book?
Well, it's a not ideal situation, but for some is their reality. And so if I just go back to the first point, often the value we put on our house is the value that you would get on a good day.
Yeah.
And there can just be quite a big swing between a good day and a bad day. And the problem with, if you have bought a property before you've sold your property, we need to be able to settle on the new property, ideally after you have sold your home. So you can secure it, but you'd give yourself a long settlement time in theory. That works, that's all well and good, but this person might say, well, I'm only going to accept your offer if we settle within the next month or whatever. And then you're asking the question, well, can you afford to wait again for something else to happen? And can you do it in the preferred best practice order of, well, I'm going to sell my house and then I'm going to find another one? I can tell you that is so scary, the idea as you get older of selling your house and not knowing
where you're going to go,
what you're going to go to next. Like that's actually petrifying for a lot of people. And then that will create anxiety, and then it kind of off we go down the spiral of health decline. So there can be genuine reasons why you would do that. If you can avoid it, of course. But we need to be able to weather the instance where your house hasn't sold. And I can tell you, if you have done that, and if you haven't managed to sell your home when you needed to, you're going to have to sell it really quickly. And the problem with that, you get a cheap offer. And you don't have the luxury of countering it too aggressively, because
you've gone for bridging finance probably or something, and that'll be horrendous, I imagine, the interest rate for that.
That's right. Well, bridging finance is when you've borrowed against one property and you're waiting for the other property to sell, because that's the other problem, is that you might have the asset in your properties, but the banks, you're dead to the banks because you're not earning money. Like you've paid them so much money to get that house over the years, but if you don't have income coming in, it's almost like you don't even exist. And so then if you don't have the cash to buy that next property, if you've got the cash, happy days, go for it. That is the benefit of having the cash, is that you can do that. But if you don't have the cash to buy that new property, then you're going to have to borrow. So you're going cap in hand to the bank. You're painful at the best of times, and they will give you the money. They'll secure it against everything. Up the wazoo, they'll be securing it. But they're charging you a higher interest rate, 7, 8, 9%, sometimes 10, 12%. And you can afford that. You know, like maybe if you can afford that for a month or two, maybe 6 months, like, I don't know, maybe it works out to $5,000 a month is the holding cost that you've exposed yourself to because of this timing. Well, I'd say 5,000, who cares? Get the job done. But if that 5,000 or that month actually stretches to 12 months, it's still costing a lot. And you're trying to get the house sold and all these things, and you've done everything you can. You're just waiting for someone to put an offer on. Well, that can just take a while. That's when we needed to have thought, how long could we afford to bridge it for? And at what point should you start to drop the price, because the whole cost of having this unresolved is starting to stack against you? And I think if you just know those things, it's comforting. It's certainly comforting for the person who isn't making the decision, or, you know, I guess you're both making the decision, who's not taking the lead on some of this, and they're wanting to say some of this to their partner, not wanting to kind of rattle the cages or rattle your dags, as it were, but they just, you're thinking it. Even if you can't articulate it, you're thinking, at what point is this making no sense anymore? And I think to have had those conversations beforehand is so valuable.
And have all that in front of you in your mind. What about reverse mortgages? What's your thought on reverse mortgages?
Look, a reverse mortgage has its place. Say if you needed to, say you were doing it in the right order. I don't even know if there is a right order, but you're happy to sell your home before you commit to the next property, which as you get older, that's uncomfortable. Let's say you were comfortable with that. For your home to sell, you need to do it up to get it looking good, so you can get the maximum value for it. That might cost $50,000. If you don't have that $50,000 kind of sitting around in lazy money, the reverse mortgage really is your only option. Now, you're not going to have it for long. You're just going to have it until you sell your home, but it's giving you the money, and it's giving you the money for a very short period of time. So the nominal cost is next to nothing. And what it's unlocked is your ability to move to the next stage. And to do that, yes, it might cost you a little bit of interest for that couple of months until you sell your house. But if you manage to get another $50,000 more for the property because you were presenting it in the best way, or if you could get an offer sooner because it looked really nice, or if it just meant you got an offer, I would say that trade-off is worth it. But there's a point at which you've just got to be mindful of the cost. And a lot of people think with reverse mortgages that you're going to have them for the rest of your life. I say use it tactically. Play the card at the right time and then throw away.
Because they do have for some reason,
they've got a stigma.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think some people are foolish with
They've
them.
been caught with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think some of the rules back in the day were a little bit questionable, but you've just got to know what to look for. And if you've got the right conditions, they can serve a purpose. We've just got to have the guardrails on, and we've got to know when we stop using them.
Funny, isn't it, how people look at reverse mortgages suspiciously, but don't think about credit cards.
I know. Isn't that ridiculous? Or you love your bank and you're like, but they literally...
Fleece.
Yeah. Well, they make a lot of money for you being useless with your money. And so you're just like, well, be careful if you're getting advice from the people who profit from you to not too well.
You may have already answered this, but, it is such a huge emotional decision. What's your advice for people facing that decision that you can call on from your years of dealing with people over this?
Well, often if you're in a couple, you don't always arrive at the same timing of when you're ready to downsize. Often someone is ready to downsize before the other. And so that can create a tension around something that is actually quite emotional already for everyone. And it's you're confronted with moving to the next stage, right? That's confronting. I remember talking to my mum about some of that, and she was saying, like your whole life is filled with confrontation, like you've confronted things, and this is a confrontation with yourself that I am getting older. And you don't, it's a little bit uncomfortable. But I know when we were looking for her property she was going to downsize to, that took us like a year to find the right property. So we had to start that journey. So I guess my observation and my recommendation is let's start a conversation. We need to work backwards. We probably need to understand what your retirement looks like. But if you don't have the stomach to have that conversation, well, then let's at least think, when are we going to downsize by? And whenever you think you're going to downsize earlier. Give yourself 2 years runway so that you're not holding the baby at the wrong time. It's uncomfortable to see people's wealth or that lifeline, that trump card, amount to almost nothing because they didn't play it right. But I do think we can navigate it. The worst observation, or the worst thing that I have observed, is when people are forced to downsize quickly, and that's because a partner has maybe had the fall and ended up in hospital because they've broken their hip, and it's no longer deemed safe for them to live at home for whatever reason. And it could be a variety of reasons, but they've ended up in hospital, and so their next step is a rest home. And that is a big capital outlay for some families to get that the way that they want. I remember speaking to one of the nursing directors of one of these rest homes that I visited, and she said that 70% of people who arrived at the rest home 2 weeks earlier weren't expecting to be there. Unplanned.
Really?
They didn't expect it to happen. And the financial implication for you, or if you're the spouse of the person who had the fall or whatever, has ended up in hospital, and for whatever reason it's not deemed safe for them to return home, they need assistance with daily living or whatever they need the rest home for. If you're having to downsize at that moment, because where are you going to find the money to put Mary into the rest home? Where does that money come from? Well, unless you've got it sitting kind of under the mattress or somewhere, most of us don't. So they're forced to downsize at that point. And can you imagine, you thought you had emotional trauma selling the family home 15 years ago, and you have an amazing relationship with your family and with your kids. In that moment, you need to find a home for this person. It's going to cost a lot of money, which is grim anyway. You don't have the money to do that. You are feeling guilty because they're going to a rest home. They're telling you they don't even want to go to the rest home. You don't have the money, so you have to drop your pants. That is the worst outcome, and that's what we want to try and avoid, because we do want you to be cashed up, but obviously, back to Brightly, we want to prevent you having the fall in the first place.
This ageing thing, it's not for sissies, is it?
It's not for sissies.
What do you say to someone who does all this downsizing, and then suddenly has terrible regrets? Is it just, that's life? What can you say to someone?
Well, we need to unpack it. Like, what is causing the regret? Sometimes it's because they've moved away from family. So is it a case of actually being really deliberate with how we re-engage with them or what that looks like? Sometimes it's because their social settings changed. Sometimes it's because you don't have the house to tinker on anymore, or you don't have the lawn to mow. Like, there are different things that are causing the sense of becoming unsettled, and I think we often mischaracterize it as regret, but I think we need to go a bit deeper to say, well, what is the cause of this? Because you can match a substitute to those things. Like, say if you used to have a lifestyle block and you're used to working on the land, well, you might join the local men's club or the men's shed, or you can come and work on my property and help me stay in control of it. You know, there are
lawns or whatever.
Exactly. There are many ways that you can remain relevant, and the thing that is causing you to be discombobulated can actually be addressed, but we're going to have to think a little bit deeper. And please don't blame the partner for why you are where you are.
Is it a property conversation, or is it as much a health and well-being conversation, really?
I actually think it's more a health and well-being, because the stress to navigate that is enough to kind of spiral you. It definitely puts pressure on relationships, causes insomnia, all of those things which aren't good. But we're wanting you to stay in control of the process, and that just means we've got to start earlier. It almost has nothing to do with money when you start at that stage.
So what about the adult children? Bob is back. Bob, the famous Bob. How do they factor in this? Because obviously, that's the whole family dynamic, isn't it? And the adult children, they have their say as well. They think they know what's right for you as the ageing parent.
Yeah, well, there can certainly be some self-serving perspectives with that. But if you go from, I guess, the spectrum from loving child through to slightly cynical child, the loving child doesn't want you to decline. They want the peace of mind that you know what you're doing. They want you to retain agency. They don't want an inheritance. They want you to have a good life. Through to it's less about an inheritance. I just don't want to have to care for you because I don't think I can do it well.
Not capable.
Not capable. Through to why are you eroding our inheritance on your lifestyle? Like that's sort of the spectrum that kids can have. It can be hard for them to look at, kind of from the outside looking in. It's not helpful when they've got a strong view and they don't appreciate all the components that feed into aging. And that's where our friend Bob came in, kind of that hypothetical that they come in hot and they have a bit to say. As you get older, that's just unsettling.
Yes.
Actually, it's not helpful. It can be detrimental to someone's confidence. And you've got to appreciate that as you're getting older, you are losing some of that confidence, especially if you've stopped work kind of more than 5 years before you're making some of these decisions.
Yes.
But where we can, certainly I used to encourage intergenerational conversations. I want everyone at the table because I used to think, well, I can help navigate this in an objective way. Instead of there tends to be a little bit of bullying. That's was my observation. Or you slot into the roles that, you have the older sister and you have the younger sister and you kind of...
The family dynamic never changes, really.
Exactly. And that isn't always helpful navigating this.
Yeah. So, I mean, for a lot of people, possibly this is not urgent now, but what would you say? I think what I'm taking out of this is do it early.
Yes.
So that, or make that decision early, and so you've got time to follow it all the way through.
Or have the plan. Know what you need to do by when, what success looks like, and what are the things that might mean we've got to bring some of these timings forward. Whenever you thought you were going to downsize, I would downsize earlier. I think maximising what you get for your home is a big conversation that we need to also unpack in a different episode, but that is your trump card. We have to play it correctly. Otherwise, you had your shot. You didn't get to take your shot. That's not cool. And the other thing that I would say is once you have downsized, what you do with that money is just as important as downsizing in the first place.
Making the most.
Making the most of it. It's got to be invested. What's our plan? What's feeding into that plan? And what you find is as this comes to light or it kind of moves to the surface, for some people it's empowering, but for many it's just taking the control back. You've given the control away, and sometimes you give it away because you're scared. You don't think anything you do is going to improve the situation, so what is the point of trying? And I understand that philosophy, but what I can tell you about money is it is never too late to improve an outcome. And what I can tell you about health, the sooner we can identify decline, the sooner we can correct it. Let's build your hand of cards so that you can play this next era correctly.
Play the right trump card at the right time.
That's right, baby.
I've never talked about trumps so much in my life.
Yeah, this is just my small blind. You should see me.
Well, Hannah, great to share that information, and thank you so much for that. I guess we were wearing a bit of the financial advisor hat and the Brightly hat. Yes,
it is strange flipping between hats, but I guess both hats are let's help you age well, live independently for longer, and live the life you desire and deserve for your last era.
Fantastic. What a lovely way to finish.
These decisions are big, financially and emotionally, but you don't have to navigate them alone. At Brightly, we help families step back, look at the full picture, and make smart decisions before stress takes over. You can find us at agebrightly.co.nz. Reach out, ask questions, that's what we're here for.
And if you want to connect with me and Hannah, we'd love to hear your feedback on this podcast and anything you might want to talk to us about. Our social media links and other details are in the show notes. We'll see you next time on The Next Bit.